Hello everyone, Lawrence Fleming here again. I was going to make this video outside, but it just rained. So I'm in here hiding. I think it's going to stop. I don't think we're going to get any more, but the benches are wet and the trees are still kind of dripping as it slowly finds its way down to the ground. So we're going to do our video from here. I can see by looking at the signs of everything around us that we're about to break something loose here. Because of that, I'm just going to do a little walk through memory lane, if you will. Let's go back and look at some of the history of the early church. I want to look at Saul. There have been, plenty of persecutors, bad people in the time. Why did God single him out? They were all persecuting the early church. But I guess what God saw in Saul is his heart. He thought he was doing what was right. He was a Jew. He was a Pharisee. And these Christians were teaching something that they weren't familiar with. They should have been. Jesus told them they were whitewashed sepulchres or tombs because they didn't have anything on the inside. So I'm going to turn to Acts for some quick reading here. I'm going to start off just a little bit of a precursor to what we're going to actually get into. We're going to go back to Acts 7 and let's go ahead and start in 54. Stephen had actually been in and talking to the leaders, and he of course talked about Jesus, and so they're in 54, when they heard these things, they were cut to the heart, because he brought the Old Testament to them. Of course, there's no New Testament yet. He brought the Old Testament to them, pointing to Jesus, and they didn't want to hear that. But he, being full of the Holy Spirit, gazed into heaven and saw the glory of God standing at the right hand of God, and said, "Look, I see the heavens opened up and the Son of Man standing at the right hand of God." Oh, they don't like that. Nobody should have the power they do. They're all trying to be little Satans, where only Satan can have the power of God. Then they cried out with a loud voice, stopped their ears, and ran at him with one accord. And they cast him out of the city and stoned him. And the witnesses laid down their clothes at the feet of the young man named Saul. They stoned Stephen, and he was called on God, saying, "Lord Jesus, receive my spirit." Then he knelt down and cried out with a loud voice, "Lord, do not charge them with this sin." And when he had said this, he fell asleep. Okay, a little bit more on Saul in chapter 8. Verse 1, now Saul was consenting to this death. He was there. And then down to 3, as for Saul, he made havoc of the church, entering every house and dragging off men and women and committing them to prison. He was not doing nice things, but he thought he was doing the right thing. So now we're going to go ahead and turn to chapter 9. Then Saul stop moving my camera. Then Saul, still breathing threats and murder against the disciples of the Lord, went to the high priest and asked letters from him to the synagogue of Damascus, so that if he found any who were in the way, whether men or women, he might bring them to bond in Jerusalem. As he journeyed, he came near Damascus, and suddenly a light shone around him from heaven. And then he fell to the ground and heard the voice saying to him, "Saul, Saul, why do you persecute me?" And he said, "Who are you, Lord?" Then doesn't necessarily know who Jesus is. But if you can speak from heaven, you deserve to be called Lord. Then the Lord said, I am Jesus whom you are persecuting. And so trembling and astonished, Lord, what do you want me to do? And the Lord said to him, arise and go into the city, and you will be told what you must do. And the men who journeyed with him stood speechless, hearing a voice but seeing no one. Then Saul rose from the ground, and when his eyes were opened, he saw no one. So they led him he was blinded. So they led him by the hand into Damascus. And in 3 days, without sight, neither ate nor drank. And then eventually, someone by the name of Ananias, down in 10, comes to him and said that he had a vision and gave him his sight back. Saul basically was very zealous about killing off Christians because he thought they were destroying his Jewish religion. He did it for the right reason. He was wrong, but everything that he was taught, he was right. So be careful how you judge someone. Only God knows what's in somebody's heart. And I'm going to read the commentary here. Stephen was one of the 7 men chosen to serve the church by taking over the responsibilities of distributing food to the widows, freeing the apostles to continue preaching God's message. As a result, the church grew at a rapid pace. Every job you do is useful. Even if it's just feeding the widows, then the apostles could preach. It's amazing that God has a job for everybody. And many know of Stephen as the first Christian to die for his faith. But Stephen was also an amazing teacher. Don't skip over that. His teaching continued even while he was being killed by those throwing stones at him. And then the immediate outcome of Stephen's martyrdom was more persecution. However, something significant happened. As a result, what have I got here? A gnat flying around me. So much humidity. The church was scattered. They said, that's bad to have the church scattered. No. Don't read into stuff like that. As the church was scattered, so did the gospel. As people settled into new places, they shared the stories of Jesus. So every time they're scattered, it just spreads the gospel around. Now, we're going to hear about Damascus here soon because there's a problem with Damascus. First off, it's in Syria, and that's where a lot of the fighting is going on. Israel keeps doing attacking runs up there to kill off the supplies coming in. So I'm actually in Isaiah 17. The burden against Damascus. Behold, Damascus, you will cease from being a city, and it will be a ruinous heap. And it talks about the other areas around there and about Syria, the remnant of Syria. So there's going to be a big war fought there at some point in time. Isaiah had to be one of the most unpopular prophets because he didn't have a lot of good news for people. In 16, Moab is destroyed. I'm in chapter 16. 14:28, Philistia is destroyed. In 24, Assyria is destroyed. In 22, Babylon is destroyed. And here's an interesting little bit of information in here. This is what I like about doing a study out of the Bible. If you just read it straight through from cover to cover, it kind of all blends together. And yeah, you've read it, but when you study something, then you get to see things like this one. I'm in 14:12, the fall of Lucifer. How you are fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning. and you were cut down to the ground. We know that's still coming. He's going to be kicked out of heaven. So again, Isaiah has given us the future. You who weaken the nations, talking about Satan, in verse 13, for you have said in your heart, I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will sit on the mount of congregation on the farthest side of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High. Yet you shall be brought down to Sheol, to the lowest depths of the pit. Those who see you will gaze upon you and wonder, saying, is this the man who made the earth tremble, who shook kingdoms, who made the world a wilderness and destroyed its cities? Satan's going to lose. He's going to lose big time. But he's so arrogant, he can't see it. It's all written down here. We've got it all here. All that's coming is basically going to be, all the destruction you're going to see is going to be authorized by God, but Satan's going to do the work. Satan does all the dirty work. Well, he can clean my toilet if he wants. I'm not afraid of him at all, because Jesus is far greater than him. But what's going to happen is going to happen fast. And so I just wanted to kind of look back and see who these people were that were willing to die. Paul eventually is persecuted, put in prison. Some of his best letters were in prison. John wrote Revelation in prison. I don't want to go to prison. That's okay, I'm not a writer, so I'm okay. I don't have to write this stuff for you. I wait until I'm inspired, and then I record. So God's given you all this. He went out of his way to save Saul because he knew his potential. He gave him a new name, Paul. We don't really see things really bad yet, but we're supposed to compare this to the time of Noah. Remember, it didn't rain until the ark was built, and everybody was on board except for the family. All the animals were on board, they were ready to go. And then it started raining. And probably at first nobody knew what to make of it. I don't think it rained prior to that on the earth. Because what's the sign of the covenant when it's all over? A rainbow. Surely they've seen rainbows before, but no, this is the covenant sign. So they've never seen a rainbow. You can't see a rainbow without sun and clouds. Do you see a rainbow when it's heavily clouded and it's potentially raining? No. You have to wait till the sun comes out. I don't think they'd seen the sun. I don't think they'd seen the stars. I think they were fully covered in a cloud over the whole earth. I teach Genesis a little different than tradition. There being the 6 actual days. I don't believe that. I believe there were long periods of time in between those, and that they weren't actual days. We're told a day is 1,000 years. That's basically saying God's time is God's time. It's not our time. But I have a personal way of looking at Genesis, and I might, if we have time, I might talk about that here soon. I look at things from a scientific point of view. At one time, when I got out of high school and went into the Navy, I had plans of going back to college, and I wanted to be a physics major because I wanted to study how God does all this stuff. I even worked for a little while at, when I was in Silicon Valley, when I got out of the Navy, I worked at the Stanford Linear Accelerator Center, SLAC. Yeah, in south of Sunnyvale, there's actually a accelerator for throwing atomic particles around. There's a mile-long track, or a mile-long beamline tunnel, and then it goes into a ring that they can keep it going in a circle for a while. It's very interesting how they do this, that they have magnets. They're going to put an electron in the pipe. Electron is a negative charge. So the magnet in front of it is positively charged, pulling it towards it. As soon as it goes past that magnet, these things switch on a dime. The magnet switches negative to push it, and the next magnet is positive, pulling it. And then when it goes past that, it switches negative and pushes it. That's how they can get these things going 3/4 the speed of light down that beam line. And then they can keep it in the spear ring until it, they get tired of using it, I guess. And what they do is they play subatomic billiards. They put a box or something on a stand, and then they shoot this particle into it, and there's sensors all around it that can tell what kind of particle is hitting the sensor. And when they hit it and it breaks apart, all these particles go flying out. They're trying to find the building blocks. They haven't yet. I was sitting one time with a PhD doctorate brainiac. I don't know if we can call him, what's his name? Well, this guy was more, he was, who are the actors on Big Bang Theory? The main guy. Leonard was just the engineer. I can't think of his name. The tall, skinny guy, the crazy guy. That's who this guy kind of reminded me of. I can't think of his name. But I asked him, why is an electron positive and a negative and a proton positive? And he quoted me my paragraph right out of my book, because I just read that, and it didn't explain it, and neither did he. It just says one is and one's the other. It didn't explain it. They can't explain God. Is it all an illusion? Is it real? I've got questions on that we won't know until we're with God. But anyhow, after my meeting with him, I decided that's not going to work. So while I was learning how to work on computers, I decided to have some fun, so I changed my major to theater arts. And that's where it is today. I never got my degree. I didn't need it. God led me everywhere I went. I found jobs working with computers after teaching myself with the Spirit's help, because I became a Christian up in that area when I was going to school for the Navy. And I got jobs that taught me more and more. I finally went down to LA indirectly. I went actually to Reno, got a job there, and then the guy had a project he was developing. We finished it. He sold it to somebody in Monrovia, which is east of LA. And then nobody wanted, we didn't want to live there. It was like covered in false smog all the time. I mean, if you were flying an airplane into Monrovia, you had to come in on instruments because you couldn't see. We didn't want to live there. So he said, I got a job interview at TRW. Do you want me to get you a job interview too? And I said, sure. Well, I showed up and he never did. And I've never seen him since, so I don't know what he ever did. But I got the job. So I got to work on a satellite system. Milstar, it's a communication satellite. And I did a little bit of Hollywood work, but not a lot. Got to work a little bit on MASH, but again, insignificant. I didn't like the work, so I didn't stay with it. I didn't want to pay my dues. And I didn't want to pay my dues up at Stanford either. I could have gone to Stanford for free, and I didn't want to do that. It just wasn't for me. I took the path that I felt I was being led in. And I took the path from Southern California to Georgia. Because we were on a Lockheed subcontract, I came here and worked for Lockheed for a year. It got me here. And I'm very happy that I'm here. California is, they're practicing for hell, I think. They just came up with a new law in California that if you have a well Next year in February, you're going to be required to pay $300 a month, not a month, a year, to register that well. And then you got to pay so much per cubic water that you take out of the well. You own the land, but the state of California says, well, we own the water. And in one state, they won't let you collect rainwater because they say they own that too. Do you see where we're going? It's going to keep getting worse. Keep praying that we get through this. I have no issues with what's going on other than the price of gas. And it just means I got to control that I don't drive places. I schedule my time better. When gas was cheap, if I wanted to drive an hour to go do something and come back, I'd do it. Well, now I have to make sure that I can do 2 things or 3 things for that. Now the gas is coming down right now because we're coming close to the election. Going to go right back up as soon as the election's over. Of course, it depends on the outcome, but I can pretty well guarantee that the big D's are going to win again like they did the last time, using maybe similar tactics, or we may have the 9/11 event like I've mentioned, in which case they declare martial law, or we get a national climate emergency, which we almost had declared, in which is still a national emergency, and he can again declare martial law. All the things that the president is doing through his committees is unconstitutional. All the legislative power was put in Congress. But they like the idea of him being a puppet dictator. He gets his script in the morning and he tries to stay to it. He's just getting too senile, he can't remember now. Maybe time to get rid of him. But Congress, at least for the time being, wants to continue to pull the wool over everybody's eyes to stay in the background. They blame the president for everything in the past few years, but they've put all the stuff in place. If the president wants to give $1 billion or $1 trillion just to a country, Congress still approves it, unless he can transfer it from one committee to another. But Congress approves it. The money that went to Iran a while back, Congress approved. They're the bad guys. Pelosi and the lad up there, they're the bad guys. And for those that want our fearless leader out of office, his vice president can't run anything. She would not be elected if they hadn't put her in there and rigged the election. But you take both of them out, who do you have? The Speaker of the House. Do you really want that? And I guess it doesn't matter because they've got control anyway. Okay. Keep working for God while we're waiting for these few days. I liked Barry Oz, high watch period coming up August 6th and 7th, I think it is. That weekend, whatever. It's the weekend of awe. But we got all the other holidays coming up, including trumpets and tabernacles. Which ones are going to be? It's going to be this fall. It has to be. To stay within the timeline, the fig tree timeline, it has to be. Are we all going? I hope so. I'm starting to hear rumors that this is for an elite group. Well, if by chance it is, and you're one of my followers, you know what you need to do. Just keep on keeping on. Cliche time. Keep doing what you're doing. Help others. A lot of what the early church did was spent time helping others, including other church members. So, if you want to come in and help feed the widows so that the preachers can preach, there you go. There's a job for everybody. If you're housebound, phone ministry, find something. God knows your abilities. And if you don't have the talent for it, don't worry. You will get it. Because the Spirit will give you a double portion to help get you started. Okay. Till we meet in the clouds. God bless.